up into different places where like this is only appropriate here, and like don't talk about this over here. And it's been really important to me to try and find different places to bridge that, and still recognizing what would be inappropriate, but getting a chance to, as much as possible, look into the holistic pieces of how all of us tie together, so that you have that context in interacting with another person as an actual human being. So tonight I'm actually going to read my story from my anthology, Nerve Endings, The New Trans Erotic. And I tried to put a little bit of an emphasis there on the new trans erotic, that this isn't necessarily what people would expect from an erotic anthology. And in fact, the one negative review I've gotten of this book so far was someone who was upset that they couldn't jerk off to every story. And I think that's fine with me, because this book is about the holistic experience of trans people's sexualities. And honestly, a lot of our experiences of sexuality have been pretty hard. And not to shy away from that and include all the different pieces of what that looks like. I'm gonna read a story today called Brunch Service. And I don't have time to read the whole thing, so I'm gonna have to kind of jump in the middle. And that may be a little bit confusing because there's half a dozen characters and I'm skipping right past their introduction. So you won't necessarily know who any of these characters are, but that's fine, that's fine. The key part is for me to jump ahead to the thoughtful sexiness. Woo! Woo! You all ready for that?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so a little bit of sexiness would be nice.
Yeah.
Right? Now I won't disappoint. There will also be self-introspection and maybe a little bit of dysphoria. But
that's how I love my sex.
Yeah, something that feels real. So this is called Brunch Service, and it is about a young trans woman invited to her first ever brunch and sex party. And she's pretty nervous about that. Eventually was convinced by her friends to go, and it's a small, intimate group who had all previously worked together in trans activism. So just jumping right in, everything was delicious. Madison had apparently worked at a brunch place years ago. It was nice getting to see everyone. We'd all been pretty close during the summer when we were organizing all those trans lady picnics. But since then, we hadn't spent much time together. Over food, we caught up about new jobs, new relationships, and such. Monica told us about some fucked up street harassment she had gotten. I mentioned a new coworker who was incredibly condescending to me and incessantly called me darling and sweetheart. Laura had been struggling to get the bank to deposit a check because it wasn't made out to her dead name. It was really good to have people to talk with about this kind of stuff. People who didn't need explanations and who gave instant feedback about how fucked up all of this is. So, Angela, Evelyn said. As soon as Evelyn addressed her, Angela got up on her knees from the sitting position she had been in on the floor. I want to thank you for being the impetus to getting us all together, but can you explain more about this fantasy of yours? You get to be the one cis woman serving a group of trans women? What's that about? Well, I have great admiration for the trans women in my life. I know so many who are incredible powerhouses doing really amazing things. And when trans misogyny affects my friends and lovers, I'm impacted by it too. Especially when it's done in women's spaces ostensibly for my benefit. It just makes me sick. I wanted to flip the script and create a women's space that centers trans women, where I can be the cis woman who is at your service, and in doing so, show all of you my appreciation. That explanation makes a bunch of sense, Monica chimed in. At first, I thought the whole scenario felt a bit exoticizing, but I'm not getting that feeling now that I'm here. But it's more than just flipping the script, added Rachel. There's the sexual aspect, of course, and it has an odd feeling of cis guilt or something. Angela grinned and looked away for a moment. I'm never going to claim to be perfect. Maybe cis guilt is part of it. But being a service submissive is my fetish. So more directly, this is my fantasy, and I'm grateful to you all for allowing me to indulge. But that's the basic logic of why this particular service dynamic is something I specifically wanted. Breaking the tension, Catherine crassly interrupted. In that case, I'm up for being serviced. She lifted the edge of her long skirt and beckoned. Angela went to her and placed her lips on Catherine's calf. She slowly worked her way up until her head disappeared under Catherine's skirt. I was surprised how the casual conversation returned despite Catherine's occasional sighs. After a while, though, Monica summoned Angela back to the table. Grabbing a cookie from the tray, she wagged it in the air. You've been such a good ally, she said. I've got something for you. Angela's embarrassment took her over and her cheeks flushed red, but dutifully she crawled over to Monica and received a bite of the cookie from her hands. I know you've got a thing for feet, Monica said. How would you like to suck on mine? The view that I had was quite a thing to behold. Angela on her knees, head bent to the floor, her pussy peeking out just underneath her ass. Apparently, I wasn't the only one enticed. Rachel was the first to move over and began feeling up the inside of her leg. Catherine joined in, positioning herself behind Angela, gently pressing her hips into Angela's. Ma'am, I don't want to presume your preferences for kinds of sex, Angela said. But if you so desired, I'd be honored for you to fuck me however you like. There's condoms and lube tucked under the table next to you. Rachel and Catherine had their arms around each other and were kissing. Monica moaned loudly from the attention she was getting. Evelyn leaned back and was enjoying the show. Madison was caressing Angela's back, quietly speaking, "That's right. That's a good girl. I'm so happy with you right now. You're doing so well." When I see Catherine fucking Angela that way, I mean, using her junk to penetrate her, I'm struck with amazement and perhaps a bit of confusion. All these messages are running through my head. She's fucking like a man, taking the male role. She looks like some kind of chick with a dick. I close my eyes and I try to shut them out. Then I look again. She doesn't actually look like anything but herself. Despite the internalized messaging still playing on a loop in my head, I can't actually see her as a guy, even when I try. I've seen that motion in movies and in porn, but come to think of it, I've seen images of women thrusting their hips in the same way just as much, sometimes with strap-ons, sometimes just dry humping. I wonder, how does that work for her? Does she feel dysphoria about it? I mean, how could she not? Does she just kind of do it anyway? Does she hide from it or dissociate from that part? It kind of makes me wonder if I could ever... No. No, I don't think I could. When I think of what she's doing, I alternate between a half dozen feelings. There's disgust at the thought of it. There's admiration. I'm impressed that she's capable of it. It makes me see her as strong in a way I hadn't considered. There's a sense of amazement at how much pleasure they both seem to be having. There's a feeling of shame at the thought of enjoying something like that. There's shame at the idea that I've been caught in the same room as it. And maybe, just maybe, there might be a bit of jealousy. There was a hand on my shoulder. It was Laura. So, I wasn't sure if I was going to come to this or not, but then I heard you would be here. She smiled and cast her eyes down, stealing glances up at me. Is that flirting? But I was wondering if you might be up for, Laura was blushing now. Can I kiss you? She was so cute. How embarrassed she was getting. Suddenly, all the times she hung out after meetings were done, or the tone of excitement in her voice when she said hi to me, made a lot more sense. How could I not have noticed? I leaned in and gave her a kiss. And then I pulled away to look at her face. A wide grin was plastered over it. She laughed and then leaned over and kissed me again, more deeply, and she pushed me back onto the arm of the couch. Coming to this party was definitely a good idea. Thanks. Well, before I go, I do want to say I'm going to have copies of my book along with the Resilience Anthology and my children's books if you want to come check those out as well. At the merch table in the back, I've also got a postcard which has more information about this book, as well as my upcoming one-woman play, Fallen Star, a story about a trans superhero turned villain who tries to take over the world.
Yes!
Thank you all.